SpongeGex here with one of my biggest review projects yet, reviewing the classic Looney Tunes shorts. The Looney Tunes shouldn't need any introduction. They were praised as some of the funniest cartoon characters across the golden age of animation, but they've had a pretty rough history, with terrible management, a lack of faith in the studio heads, many failed revival attempts, and flat-out sabotage from the current head of Warner Brothers, with the cruel cancellation of the Coyote vs. Acme movie, and trying to make the currently upcoming Day the Earth Blew Up movie bomb in theaters. How has David Zaslav not been fired yet? In response to my Walt Disney Treasure reviews, I had a few ask if I would ever review the classic Looney Tunes cartoons. So I decided to finally do it, but it will take forever since there are so many shorts and discs to go through. Too many of the shorts are very similar, so I decided to not review them all, but only review the ones that I actually have something to say about, for better or worse. If there's a short that flat out bored me, then what's the point in talking about it if there's nothing of value? I don't want to have a repeat of my Silly Symphony review where I keep saying in a row like, oh, same as the last, same as the last. I'm not doing that again. So, most of the Looney Tunes shorts can be found on the Looney Tunes Gold Collection DVDs, but before I get to that, I'm going to review the shorts on the Collector's Choice Blu Rays Volumes 1 through 4, since there's less to go through on those. For starters, we have Bone for a Bone from 1951, starring the Goofy Gophers, Mac and Tosh. I only wanted to bring up this short to point out that I think the Goofy Gophers are some of the worst Looney Tunes characters ever made, and I do not plan on reviewing any of their other appearances. They're all the same thing, just annoying clones of Chip and Dale, except they're British and overly polite.
May I impress him this time? Yes, I think you should. Thank you. Not at all.
I never found these two funny as kids, and I still don't find them funny over 30 years later. The whole short has a dog trying to bury a bone, while the Gophers prevent the dog from burying it into their tunnels as they hurt him throughout. I will admit there is one funny gag in this cartoon where they put a glove on the end of a hose and they start stretching it to fool the dog into thinking that they're stretching his arm incredibly long. That's kind of funny. I've already mentioned in the past how much I hate Gopher versus Dog cartoons, or just Gopher cartoons in particular. The only one I ever liked was the Tex Avery short Guarding Gopher. That's the only one to ever make me laugh. This is basically what every other cartoon with these two are like. Just two brutally punishing gophers hurting a target while constantly saying, "After you, oh thank you," over and over. It gets very annoying. A Feud There Was is a story that's been done to death across many sources of media based on the American folklore of the Hatfield-McCoy feud, where two hillbilly families hated each other and constantly fought each other. I mean, any story about feuding families can be tracked back to this old story, including movies like Klaus, and there was even a banned segment based on the story from the opening of the Disney movie Make Mine Music. It was banned for its excessive gun violence and comical deaths. In this Merry Melodies adaptation of the old story, Tex Avery lends his wacky brand of humor to the story. Now, one thing that I'll get out of the way is that a lot of early Looney Tunes cartoons involved a lot of singing, and as much as I love these cartoons, I honestly never cared for the songs in most Looney Tunes shorts. I never found them funny or entertaining, just kind of annoying, kind of a time waster, but this adaptation does have some very funny gags, like the family spelling out messages by firing bullets. The best running gag involves an early version of Elmer Fudd constantly trying to be the peacemaker as everyone comically shoots him, and he randomly appears yodeling, and his yodels were supplied by Roy Rogers, who was the narrator from the Pecos Bill segment in Disney's Melody Time. Isn't it strange how two Disney package films have a connection to this short in particular? The gags in the short aren't bad for their time. Some of them were done a lot funnier in Tex Avery's later MGM shorts, but there are still some really funny ones here, like the one where the McCoy looks at the audience and shouts if any weavers are in the audience.
Is there a weaver in the audience? Yeah, you skunk!
And then there's a referee who steps in when a McCoy steps over the boundary line. The short ends comically with the feuding families getting sick of Elmer's preaching as they dive in to beat him up, but Elmer surprisingly knocks them all out without any effort, as the weaver from the audience comically shoots Elmer in the butt. It's overall another very silly classic from Tex Avery. A Fractured Leghorn from 1950 is the first Foghorn Leghorn short that I'll go over in this review. One of Robert McKimson's most popular characters. He's an oversized rooster who talks like a lawyer from the South, and he's probably one of the funniest Looney Tunes characters to quote, with his many comical insults and comparisons.
What's a big idea chasing my worm? You're a cat, son. Cats don't eat worms. You're taking the food right out of my mouth. I don't go around chasing mice. Stand up, boy. You're tripping over your own feet.
To be honest, I never found McKimson shorts to be the best when it comes to other Looney Tunes animators and directors, but I love the Foghorn shorts. It's really hard to describe this character. He's just so funny. Can we bring back that meme where he's insulting anime characters? Those were hilarious. So most of Foghorn shorts were very formulaic, with not a lot of differences, but I still find myself laughing at them, no matter how similar they are. Watching this oversized bird ranting nonstop and getting his comeuppance for his shenanigans. Usually he's pitted against his rival Barnyard Dog or Henry Chickenhawk, but in this short he's pitted against a short-lived character who is oddly referred to as the Supreme Cat. Design-wise, he's basically a blander version of Sylvester, but he has gone on to appear in some very funny cartoons, including It's Hummer Time, but more on that one later. In this short, Supreme Cat tries catching a worm to use as fish bait, but he happens to target the one worm that Foghorn is after. Foghorn was so much funnier in the earlier shorts, where he was constantly pushing and bumping into people as he insults and lectures them, and you just don't see him getting that physical in his later appearances. There's just a lot more animation put into him in this one. And
What kept you, son? I can't hold my breath forever. I'm not a fish. I gotta breathe air. Little consideration for me. You're down again.
So after a lot of comical interruptions, Foghorn decides to settle things by chopping the worm in half and splitting it with the cat, but the worm keeps tucking itself in, making the division more complicated. As Foghorn goes on another one of his babbling rants, the cat hits him and gives the famous, shut up! This line was used in so many Looney Tunes cartoons across many different characters.
2 half-nothings is a whole nothing, and I know what I'm talking about because shut up!
The short ends with Foghorn still ranting, even trying to prevent the end of the show Blackout Iris from cutting him off. This is honestly my favorite Foghorn short. It's just got some of the funniest physical animations, and along with its comical ending, I love it.
Okay, I'll shut up. I'm not one that has to keep talking. Some fellas just have to keep their mouths flapping, but not me. I was brought up right. My pa used to tell me shut up, and I'd shut up. I wouldn't say nothing. One time darn near starved to death. Wouldn't tell him I was hungry.
A Hound for Trouble from 1951 was the last short to star Charlie Dog, a short-lived character created by Chuck Jones, one of the most popular cartoon directors from Looney Tunes. I always felt mixed about Chuck Jones. He can range from having some of the funniest and most memorable shorts to some of the most boring and overly cutesy cartoons. One minute he'll make a cutesy Disney clone, the next he'll make a very mean-spirited and violent short. Results and quality can vary. I was always more of a Friz Freleng fan, to be honest. I always thought he made some of the most memorable Looney Tunes cartoons, or at least some of the funniest, but Chuck Jones still has some very standout and very memorable shorts. Sadly, I wouldn't call A Hound for Trouble to be one of them. It's, in my opinion, the weakest of the Charlie Dog shorts. Charlie Dog is a talking dog who desperately wants to be adopted, but is constantly rejected by people who find him too annoying or just not wanting a dog, period. Usually he's pitted against Porky Pig, but in this short he's begging an Italian pizzeria man to adopt him. So Charlie tries looking after the restaurant while the owner is away and scares off a customer. It's overall painfully unfunny with its culturally insensitive Italian stereotypes.
Azzamara, hey, azzamara for you. You eat a ravioli and a pasta fazola too.
But the ending did make me laugh. So the pizza man pretends to give in and adopt Charlie, and he gets rid of Charlie by pointing to the Leaning Tower of Pisa. He's like panicking, saying like, it's about to fall over. Here, hold it up while I call the authorities. And of course he ditches him and never comes back, and we see overnight Charlie's still holding up the tower and freaking out for help. So yeah, the ending admittedly was pretty funny, but it just wasn't enough for me to consider this a good or funny short. It's overall pretty forgettable. Now, I was just mentioning Friz Freleng in the last short, but here's one of his called A Mouse Divided from 1953. It's a cute and funny Sylvester short. Now, I remembered seeing this one on an old VHS rental from when I was a kid, and I loved this one, and I still do. Sylvester should hopefully need no introduction. Many Looney Tunes shorts starred many different cats over the years, but none of them had the star power as Sylvester. So he's usually pitted against many different characters, or even paired with different characters. His most famous cartoons have him chasing Tweety Bird, and usually being thwarted by Tweety's owner Granny or her dog Hector. The short opens up comically with a stork getting drunk before a delivery. This is a running gag that appeared in a number of Looney Tunes shorts. The drunken stork ends up accidentally delivering a baby mouse to Sylvester and his wife. This is one of the few shorts where Sylvester has a wife, being a blonde cat referred to as Mrs. Cat. How original. So Mrs. Cat was voiced by June Foray, who is one of the most beloved voice actresses of all time, voicing other characters like Granny and Witch Hazel, including a lot of characters who aren't even from Warner Brothers properties like Rocky and Natasha from Rocky and Bullwinkle, Mom Beagle and Magica De Spell from the original DuckTales, and many more. I forgot to mention that Sylvester, the Stork, Foghorn, Supreme Cat, and Charlie Dog were all voiced by Mel Blanc, but I figured near everyone already knew that. I mean, Mel Blanc was famous for voicing nearly every Looney Tune. He did a fantastic job overall, being able to comically go from being soft and slow to going incredibly loud or fast at the flip of a switch. No one had range like him.
Oh, I work and I slave.
And what thanks do I get? I wish I was dead.
Every day it's the same thing.
So Sylvester at first wants to eat the baby mouse, but his wife adores it and wants to raise it as their baby. Not long into the short, Sylvester gives in and warms up to the mouse as well and decides to be its father. A bunch of other cats find out about the mouse inside of Sylvester's, and they try comical attempts to sneak in and eat it. This cartoon still gives me a number of good laughs. I always got the biggest laugh with the Santa gag.
Merry Christmas! Ho, Dancer! Ho, Prancer! Merry Christmas, everybody! Merry Christmas, everyone! A Merry...
The short ends with the stork needing to reclaim the mouse and bring it back to its real parents. He tries reeling in the mouse with a fish hook with cheese bait, but as Sylvester tries protecting the mouse, he gets taken by mistake and delivered to the family of mice. It's overall just a fun and hilarious cartoon. The Tale of Two Mice from 1945 is one of the few parodies of a comedy duo called Bud Abbott and Lou Costello, except the comedy duo is reimagined as two mice called Babbitt and Catstello. Some cartoons have them portrayed as cats, but they're mice in this cartoon in particular. Catstello is constantly portrayed as a loud coward, constantly shouting for Babbitt, occasionally whistling after everything he says, and as Babbitt has to constantly try calming him down and assure him that their plans will work. I'm honestly not familiar with the comedy duo that they're spoofing off of. That is a common occurrence of many Looney Tunes shorts. They were made to be topical with the times, and so a lot of the stuff they were spoofing off of is sadly no longer mainstream or given to the public's attention, which makes a lot of them feel kind of outdated. That being said, I still think the caricatures are funny enough on their own, and you don't need to know who Abbott or Costello were to get laughs from this cartoon. In this cartoon, Babbitt keeps concocting schemes for Catstello to fetch some cheese, but he's constantly getting chased off by a cat. This cartoon is full of funny facial expressions, slapstick, and comical voice acting from Ted Pierce and Mel Blanc. This cartoon was apparently censored on TV, for there's a part where Babbitt says this line.
If this don't work, I'll be a jackass.
The short comically ends with, after all of the abuse that Catstello took from both Babbitt and the cat, he finally makes it back with the cheese. As Babbitt shames Catstello for bringing back Swiss cheese and saying that he doesn't like it, Catstello snaps and force feeds Babbitt the cheese, telling him that he'll eat it and like it. The slapstick isn't anything special. It's been done to death across many cat versus mice cartoons, but the comedy duo approach does help this one stand out on its own.
Scared of the cat. Oh, scared. So I'm scared of the cat.
Along Came Daffy from 1947 features two starving characters who strongly resemble Yosemite Sam. We get a funny gag of them fighting over the last pea against a mouse who takes the pea like he's in a basketball game. Daffy shows up as a door-to-door salesman and tries to sell the two men a cookbook. Now, Daffy should need no introduction. He's one of the most popular Looney Tunes characters created by Tex Avery. He was Looney Tunes' second breakout star following Porky Pig. Daffy originally started off as a wacky nuisance type of character until Bugs Bunny was created and became the most popular character. Chuck Jones eventually reinvented Daffy to be a very egotistical and greedy attention grabber, as he would grow to hate Bugs Bunny and see him as the guy who stole his fame. While there were some funny cartoons to come from the Chuck Jones era of Daffy Duck, with his more cynical take on the character, I always preferred the wackier Tex Avery-style Daffy. In more recent years, we've finally seen the wacky Daffy return in some cartoons. It's been a very mixed bag, where some projects will return him to form, while others will reuse the Chuck Jones Daffy, and then some will try mixing the two entirely. There's been many different takes on whether people should use the wacky Daffy or the Chuck Jones Daffy, and it's kind of interesting to see how different directors prefer a different type of Daffy. So you never know what to expect when Daffy shows up in a cartoon, what personality he'll take. So while Daffy tries selling his cookbook, the two starving men realize they could try eating Daffy since he's a duck. The two men have Daffy read off a recipe for roast duck. Daffy obliviously reads off the recipe in a sales pitch, but quickly realizes the mistake he made. He tries finding other recipes for the men, but keeps coming across recipes that require duck, including a recipe for an ice cream sundae that somehow still requires a duck. So, one of my favorite things about classic Daffy is his wacky laughter. You get a funny part where Daffy ends up in a room full of decoy ducks as he turns them all on and they start hopping and laughing just like him. And then one of the men starts shooting them until Daffy is nervously the last duck remaining. So he gets shot and his feathers resemble a bikini. So this scene was apparently cut from TV broadcasts. What sissies. So Daffy tries getting out of there by offering a complimentary turkey dinner, but mice invade the table and eat it all as Daffy gets away. Daffy foolishly comes back to try selling them some mints, and then they grab him, and the cycle repeats itself. Admittedly, the ending was kind of weak and abrupt. I just felt like the turkey dinner thing came out of nowhere, but it's overall a funny Daffy cartoon. Beanstalk Bunny from 1955 is a retelling of Jack and the Beanstalk starring Bugs and Daffy with Elmer Fudd as the giant. Daffy gets conned out of trading a cow for beans as he tosses them into Bugs Bunny's burrow. The beans, of course, grow into a giant beanstalk. As Daffy tries climbing up the beanstalk in hopes of riches, he tries kicking Bugs Bunny off of the beanstalk as Bugs angrily chases after Daffy. Daffy bumps into Elmer Fudd as the giant. Bugs tries pretending he'll protect Daffy from Elmer, as Bugs points out that the giant from the story doesn't chase a rabbit, he chases Jack. Then Bugs points at Daffy and claims that he's Jack. So the two start fighting over who's Jack, and Elmer doesn't care, he just grabs them both and is ready to eat them in a sandwich. So we get a comical, inaudible scene as Bugs and Daffy are trapped under a glass food cover. Daffy is flipping out over how they're about to be cooked, while Bugs just smugly stands there unamused. Bugs finally pulls out a glass cutter. There's a funny part where Bugs tries hiding inside of a hole, but Daffy pulls him out and calls dibs on it, only for the camera to zoom out and reveal that Daffy went inside of a giant mouse trap. There was a part that was cut from certain TV broadcasts where the two somehow end up inside of Elmer's head, and Elmer tries smoking them out with cigarettes. Bugs and Daffy keep popping out the cigarette to extinguish Elmer's matches. Somehow Bugs is able to trip the giant with his foot. There is just no way. So Bugs decides to make a run for it, but Daffy stays behind because he's too greedy for the giant's belongings. As Bugs escapes, he stumbles upon a giant carrot garden and settles for it, and it randomly cuts to Daffy being used as the arms for Elmer's watch. It's not the greatest or funniest Bugs and Daffy short, but it's still pretty amusing.
Click.
Brother Brat from 1944 opens up with a bit of World War II propaganda about how now is the time for women to step up and help the cause by working jobs to help build weapons and vehicles for war. But one of the hardworking riveters faces a bigger challenge, finding someone to babysit her son. Enter Porky Pig, who was the unfortunate soul who has to look after her troublesome child. The woman tells Porky to just use the book on childcare to help. Porky Pig is such a fun character, not only with his comical stuttering, but the fact that he's mostly a very nice and polite character, but is constantly pushed to his limits, and when he gets angry, boy is he angry. I love the way the mom just randomly flies off like a plane as she heads off to work, and of course, the kid ends up being very mean and violent towards poor Porky, and nothing from the book is helping.
What's your name?
Butch.
Butch?
Not Butch. Just plain Butch.
Strangely enough, the mom claimed that her son's name was Percy, yet the kid claims that his name was Butch. I feel sorry for Porky throughout this short, but I'm still laughing at how unnecessarily cruel that baby is. Usually mean humor like this does not make me laugh, but it somehow works in this short. I don't know how to explain it, it just does. So Porky tries amusing the kid by giving him a cat, but then Butch starts abusing the cat, and...
Here, play with us here, pussy. Pet.
Butch gets sadistic and tries chopping Porky with a meat cleaver. We get this comically dark ending as the mom returns.
Didn't you use the book?
Yeah, but it didn't work.
Maybe you did use it right. It always works for me.
It's a very mean cartoon, but man, it makes me laugh. Catch as Cat's Can from 1947 is a strange Sylvester the Cat short, portraying him as a slow, dim-witted cat with a sillier design. A parrot parody of Bing Crosby is jealous of a singing canary who sounds like Frank Sinatra. The parrot tries talking Sylvester into eating the canary to get rid of him. We're in for a shock as the canary can go from slowly singing smoothly to loudly shouting and getting violent as Sylvester approaches him.
Hit the road, stupid!
This makes Sylvester's goal of eating the bird much harder than he thought. Sylvester keeps trying to back out, but the parrot keeps smooth-talking him into trying again. After dealing enough pain and humiliation, especially after an incident with a vacuum, the short ends with Sylvester letting the canary live, and he decides to eat the parrot instead, as we see Sylvester dressed like the parrot and lip-syncing to the parrot inside of him. According to the Looney Tunes wiki, this short has an ending that was lost to time, where the camera was supposed to scroll over and reveal a tombstone for the parrot outside. Overall, the short has a few funny moments, but it honestly doesn't hold up to the many superior Sylvester and Tweety shorts. Speaking of which, Catty Cornered from 1953 is a different take on Sylvester and Tweety, as it's a crossover with the crime boss Rocky, who appeared as an antagonist in a few other Bugs Bunny cartoons. Rocky is a short, deadly mob boss with a big bumbling henchman named Muggsy. Sadly, Muggsy is not in the short. Instead, we have another big henchman who is not as dumb or funny. So in this cartoon, Tweety is a rare pet worth $1 million. Rocky ends up kidnapping Tweety for ransom. Sylvester decides to break into Rocky's hideout to get Tweety and eat him, as Tweety thinks Sylvester is there to save him. In this cartoon, we have Rocky and his partner saying Tweety's famous line, I taught a putty tat.
I thought I saw a putty tat. You did to your putty tat.
Sylvester hides Tweety in a can, but is captured by Rocky's henchmen and frisked off-screen for the bird. Rocky finds that Tweety is underneath the can and replaces him with a stick of dynamite. The henchman comes out claiming that all he could find was a mouse. Rocky tells Sylvester to take his package and scram, so Sylvester rushes off and gets bombed off-screen. The cops manage to find Rocky eventually and demand that he comes out with the bird. Sylvester rushes out with Tweety as the paparazzi shows up thinking he's a hero for saving the bird. We cut to a ceremony with the mayor as he wants Sylvester to kiss Tweety for publicity, which leads to Sylvester eating Tweety as the mayor smacks Tweety out of his mouth. It's very similar to other Sylvester and Tweety shorts, but I do like the spin of Tweety being held for ransom as it's treated like a rescue mission, but with the rescuer actually trying to eat the captive. It's not the best Tweety short, but it's still an amusing twist on a familiar formula. China Jones is a painfully unfunny short full of Chinese stereotypes. For some reason, Daffy plays an Irish detective named China Jones as he's tasked to rescue a prisoner from a Chinese bakery for a cash reward. Porky appears redesigned with stereotypically slanted squinty eyes. Porky goes by the name of Charlie Chung, a laundryman who offers Daffy assistance in solving the case, but Daffy refuses Porky's help for he wants the reward money all for himself. It's revealed that a criminal named Limey Louie sent out the distress message to try and trap Daffy. Daffy arrives, Louie disguises himself as a lady bartender, claiming to be Louie's wife. So Daffy is given a few false tips on where to head, the first one being Wong Wei.
I decided Wong Way might be the right way to the bakery I was looking for.
Obviously a stereotypical joke on a broken English way of saying wrong way. So Daffy keeps getting bad leads, he keeps heading back to Louie's for more hot tips, till Louie finally reveals himself. Daffy realizes there is no hostage or reward money. The short confusingly ends with Daffy owing a debt to Porky as he's enslaved to do free labor at Porky's laundromat. I honestly have no idea what the point of the short was. It was very unfunny, kind of racist, and the plot made no sense. Cinderella Meets Fella from 1938 is an early Tex Avery cartoon, being a retelling of Cinderella. But why the hell does Cinderella look and sound like a 5-year-old in this short? It makes it even creepier that a bunch of other men are attracted to her. And people think it's creepy that Cinderella was supposed to be a teenager in the original story? That's honestly nothing compared to this. It is kind of funny how the fairy godmother was late, as Cinderella phones the police to find her and bring her over.
Go get her, boys!
Most of the time I was watching this, I couldn't help but be reminded of how much funnier Tex Avery's other Cinderella short was, which was Swing Shift Cinderella by MGM. That one was overall funnier than this overly cutesy cartoon. Tex Avery had less creative freedom before he moved over to MGM, unfortunately, but there are still some funny gags here, like the fairy summoning mice by playing a slot machine in front of the mouse hole, or accidentally turning the pumpkin and mice into Santa's sleigh and reindeer, or a cowboy in a wagon of horses. Funny enough, the prince turns out to be Elmer Fudd. Now, I'm honestly confused, because there was a character from this period called Egghead, who looked similar to this design. Some sources claim that Egghead and Elmer Fudd were the same character, while other sources claim they're different characters. And so, yeah, there's a lot of confusion over in what cartoons, which one's Egghead and which one's Elmer Fudd. I don't know, but so unless the short flat out has Egghead in the title. I'm just going to be calling him Elmer to make things less confusing. So too bad it's creepy to see Elmer crushing over a girl who looks like she's freaking 5. We do get a funny gag where as soon as Cinderella leaves the ball at midnight, she quickly rushes back because she realized that she forgot to drop her slipper. So at least in this version, the prince is more determined to find Cinderella, and he does all the searching on his own.
No? This must be Cinderella's house.
So Elmer finds a note by Cinderella claiming that she got tired of waiting and she went to see the latest Warner Brothers show in theaters. It leads to a comical ending where the show Ella went to see is the cartoon that Elmer is in, as she jumps up from the audience seat and rushes onto the picture for a happy ending. It's overall not that great of a cartoon, but Tex Avery still put in a few chuckle-worthy gags that prevent it from being too painfully unfunny to watch. I still find it disturbing how young Cinderella looks in this cartoon, though. Crack Quack from 1955 is a very funny Daffy and Porky short. As Daffy is late for flying south for the winter, things get too intense for him. Daffy spots a taxidermy duck inside of Porky's house and mistakes it for one of his fellow ducks. As he heads inside to greet it, Daffy ends up attacking the stuffed duck for it doesn't talk back to him. Boy, do I hope that Daffy never crosses paths with a deaf person, or he would likely attack that poor person. So as Daffy realizes the duck is stuffed, he decides to try pretending to be the stuffed duck while no one is looking, so he can live inside Porky's for the winter. Things get complicated when Daffy notices Porky has a big dog named Rover. As Daffy swats a fly with his eyebrows, the fly comically informs Rover that Daffy is a real duck and wants to raid the place with all the food and stuff like that, so... This alerts and enrages Rover. Porky gets annoyed by Rover's barking and orders him to stop barking at the stuffed duck. Porky tries proving that the duck isn't alive by smacking Daffy's head on the ground repeatedly, creating a bunch of lumps. Daffy raids the fridge and lures Rover out by throwing a turkey bone out the window, leading to this comical moment.
Oh, shucks. I can't stand to see a dumb animal suffer. So...
Oh, Rover, there's a dog here to see you.
Yeah, Rover!
Porky finds Rover outside and lets him back in. As Daffy messes with the dog again by fooling the dog into thinking the decoy is moving, Rover tears up the decoy, which enrages Porky, leading to a comical scene of Porky needing to restuff the decoy. He accidentally grabs Daffy and shoves cotton down his throat. Daffy's migrating friends fly by and notice Daffy is inside the window as they invade the place just like Daffy did at the beginning. The short ends with Porky being surprised to find a bunch of ducks partying the place up. This was always one of my favorite Daffy and Porky shorts. Cross Country Detours from 1940 is another hilarious Tex Avery classic. I always loved the shorts with the narrator trying to present something while getting bombarded with comical gags and puns. This is a mockumentary of different places across the US countrysides. It recycles the can't you read gag from the beginning of the short A Day at the Zoo, which was released a year earlier. The gag was honestly a lot funnier in that previous short. We get a weird scene with a sexualized deer. We get a gross out yet funny scene where a forest ranger is on the lookout for danger. He sees a careless park guest discard a lit cigar. The ranger races off to pick it up, but he's not concerned about the fire hazard. He just wants to smoke the cigar for himself.
The polar bear. For Mother Nature has provided him with layer upon layer of fat, plus a thick coat of heavy fur to keep him good and warm.
I don't care what you say, I'm cold.
The part with the bobcat preying on a baby quail has such a hilarious payoff.
A ferocious bobcat about to pounce upon and devour this poor, helpless little weakling.
I can't do it! I can't! I can't go through with it! I can't! I can't!
Then right after that, we got yet another laugh out loud unexpected gag, a lot darker though.
Here we show you a close-up of a frog croaking.
It may be dark, but it had me laughing so hard. Man, 2 gut-busting gags in a row. We get another weird scene with a lizard shedding its skin like it's strip teasing. I feel like the scene goes on a little too long though. In another funny gag, the narrator warns the next scene will be too scary for children, so they split it in half. For the adults on the left half, we have a giant lizard. On the right half is a little girl reciting Mary Had a Little Lamb, which leads to the payoff of the girl being scarier than the frightening lizard. We get a gag where a guy at a canyon is shouting in hopes of getting an echo, but he keeps getting nothing, leading to a gag of a phone operator saying, "There's no answer." As funny as this short is, the ending was a weak payoff. Throughout the short, there's a gag of an Alaskan dog running all the way to California, and the narrator's wondering what the dog's doing. And it just ends with the dog rushing into a forest as it finally reaches California, and it breaks into tears over all of the trees. The lip syncing during that part is really bad, to be honest, and it felt very anticlimactic. Usually Tex Avery was great at making running gags lead to a payoff that was worth it, but this really led to nothing. Regardless of its flaws, this is one of Tex Avery's funniest shorts from his time at Warner Brothers. The Fightin' Ones from 1961 has Sylvester captured by an animal catcher, and he's shackled to a big dog. The two manage to escape and try getting rid of their shackle, but keep failing, and their handcuffs keep getting in the way. This plot has been done to death in other cartoons, and even done better in other cartoons. The struggle of two characters who hate each other being stuck together and try to find a way out. To be fair, though, this is the earliest example I can think of this trope, so at the time, this concept was more unique. Depending on how well the characters can bounce off each other or work together, this plot can work really well in some shows, but Sylvester is the only interesting character in this short. It's like the only character we're actually familiar with. The dog is very forgettable. It's not like a character you'll see in other shorts, so yeah, it doesn't make the chemistry between these two very enjoyable to watch. In the end, the two resort to try having a train run over their chain to break it. It leads them to falling and landing in a junkyard. They celebrate finally breaking free of their shackles, only to realize their ankles are stuck together in a piece of junk it got lodged through, making their predicament worse than before, as they hop away from the dog catcher. It's mostly just a comical parody of Prison Breaks, but there's not a lot of laughs, to be honest. But I'll at least give it credit for being kind of a unique idea for the time, but it has been done better in some other cartoons. Daffy Doodles from 1946 is a silly idea where people in the city are in panic, for there's a criminal on the loose, and his crime is drawing mustaches on ads, billboards, posters, and even people. The criminal happens to be Daffy Duck. Daffy claims to be doing it because he's crazy and he knows it. You do you, Daffy. Officer Porky is sent out to turn in Daffy. I love how Daffy can just draw mustaches midair.
One more step, and I'll jump.
After a lot of crazy chasing, Porky finally knocks out Daffy and brings him to court. In an odd turn of events, Daffy is declared not guilty. He vows to never draw mustaches again, but he starts drawing beards instead. It's overall a very silly cartoon. Daffy's Southern Exposure from 1942 is the first black and white cartoon I'll be reviewing, and was Daffy's first solo short. Daffy slacks off on migrating for winter. Kind of funny how 1 minute Daffy is goofing off splashing in the water, then out of nowhere it instantly freezes off screen. Daffy ends up freezing and starving in a blizzard as he stumbles upon a warm-looking cabin. The cabin is occupied by a wolf and a weasel. I think it's a wolf. It might be a fox. I don't know. But either way, they're both sick of eating beans as they soon see Daffy and they try fattening him up with beans so they can eat him. It doesn't take long for the wolf and weasel to reveal their plot to eat Daffy as he tries running away. I don't know why, but I get a laugh at the part where the dumb weasel closes the door and runs into the wall. It's so random but funny. It abruptly ends with Daffy getting away and rushing off to South America. It's nothing too original, but it has its silly moments. Dangerous Dan McFoo is another Tex Avery cartoon based on the story of the shooting of Dan McGrew, which he later made as a droopy cartoon for MGM called The Shooting of Dan McGoo. I went over that short in my previous review for the Tex Avery cartoons, so this cartoon also has Dan being played by a dog, but instead of Droopy, he's voiced by Arthur Q. Bryan, who had recycled this voice to become the iconic voice of Elmer Fudd.
I was robbed! I was robbed!
Again, what is it with the love interest in these shorts looking like they're little kids? It's kind of creepy. The short is overall very forgettable. Just watch Dan McGoo instead. It's honestly a lot funnier throughout. The only thing that makes this worth watching is hearing Elmer Fudd's voice coming out of this tiny dog, but the Dan McGoo short focused more on Wolfie going crazy over Red's performance. I mean, it's basically just a clone of Red Hot Riding Hood, but set in the setting of Dan McGoo, and with Droopy as the character. But so Dan McFoo focuses more on Dan's fight with the villain. It's mostly just a comical, silly boxing match. It's honestly not as entertaining or funny, but There are still some funny moments in this short.
Hey, you mugs, you aren't getting anywhere. Here, take these. The lights went out. A woman screamed.
Eek! Speak to me!
Hello.
Devil's Feud Cake from 1963 will be the first Yosemite Sam short I talk about. Sam is one of the funniest foes for Bugs Bunny, usually portrayed as a short, grouchy, loud, and violent Western outlaw. The short opens up with Sam robbing a bank. We cut to Bugs, who is impressed with an airplane as he sneaks inside to take a look. Bugs plays around with the uniform inside as Sam hijacks the plane and mistakes Bugs as a pilot and holds him hostage as a getaway driver. This makes things funnier, for Sam doesn't realize that Bugs doesn't know how to fly a plane, leading to a lot of comical karma. Funny how Bugs does such a terrible job that he causes a robot autopilot to panic and abandon the plane with a parachute. Sam ends up taking the last parachute and leaves Bugs stranded on the dive-bombing plane. Bugs comically pulls on the brakes, causing the plane to freeze midair before crashing. In a comical twist, Sam didn't grab a parachute and grabbed a bag full of kitchen utensils as he crash lands straight to hell. The devil offers to let Sam go back to the surface world, but only if he brings him Bugs Bunny, who the devil has been after for a long time. Now, I know Bugs Bunny isn't a saint, but isn't it kind of crazy to think that he's the devil's most wanted? I mean, Sam is right there in front of him, and he's committed worse crimes than Bugs. So, we see Sam chasing Bugs across different settings. We see Sam chase Bugs through a Gladiator film set, and briefly through the deserts of Arabia.
Whoa! When I say whoa, I mean whoa!
The short abruptly ends with Sam being blasted back to hell, where the devil is about to offer him one more chance, but Sam basically says screw it and decides to become an imp. Admittedly, the beginning and ending is kind of funny, but this is a very rushed cartoon. I feel like it would have been funnier if we had more time to spend on Sam chasing Bugs across different settings, but we only got 2 settings, so yeah, it feels kind of underwhelming. And we barely spent any time in Arabia before the short abruptly ended, so I can't help but think the short would have worked better if they were separate shorts. We should have had one short based on the beginning, where we have more time to spend on Bugs trying to fly the plane, while constantly putting Sam and himself in danger. That alone could have worked as its own short. Then we should have had a separate short where it opens up with Sam being sent to hell, and needing to catch Bugs to spare himself. We should have seen like more situations of Sam chasing Bugs through different settings, with different outfits, or there's so many better ways they could have done this short, but it's overall a real mess of a cartoon. It has a few funny moments, but it's a real mess. Doggone Cats is just a lame clone of a not-so-great Pluto cartoon. There was a short where Mickey wanted Pluto to pick up a meat order from a deli, as his rival Butch hounds Pluto for the package, only for the lame twist that the meat Mickey ordered was actually a present for Butch all along. This short is the same thing, except with a big dog bullying Sylvester and a random cat. The dog is tasked to deliver a package to someone, while the cats try to get payback and try to damage the package. The short ends with the dog managing to go through so much hell, but he manages to make it with the package, and he gives it to the man, only for the man to be revealed to be the owner of the 2 cats, and the package was food for his cats. So, I didn't find it funny in the Pluto short, but at least the dog in Doggone Cats was more unlikable, which made this karma ending of the cats a little less annoying, but it's still not very funny. Double or Mutton from 1955 is one of the few Sam and Ralph shorts by Chuck Jones, where a wolf named Ralph, who strongly resembles Wile E. Coyote, is constantly trying to raid sheep, but he's comically stopped by a watchful sheepdog named Sam. These shorts are usually very repetitive and similar, but there's still charm to them. The best gags in these shorts have Sam and Ralph usually acting like friends from work as they clock in and give a friendly greeting before they start fighting across the entire cartoon, usually ending with the 2 clocking out. It's so stupid, but so silly. Ralph's design is overall pretty lazy, mostly looking like a bent red-nosed Wile E. Coyote, but I always loved Sam's design. I have a soft spot for characters where you can't see their eyes, it limits their faces, but it still allows for a lot of comical moments. It's like characters who wear sunglasses. It's funny because you don't know what face they're actually making underneath those shades, which can lead the viewers to fill in the blanks with what a character is thinking during some unfortunate moments. It's funny how these feel familiar to the Roadrunner shorts, but are still very different. The Roadrunner shorts are chase cartoons across deserts and highways, where the Ralph and Sam shorts take place on a sheep meadow, and play out more like heist cartoons. Both have another thing in common, where one character always wins and the other loses. So instead of a coyote being after one Roadrunner, it's about a wolf going after many sheep. It's kind of shocking they never made a short where Wile E. Coyote is having trouble chasing multiple Roadrunners at once. That could have made for an interesting twist on the formula, but There's one funny gag where Ralph dresses as Bo Peep and he tries taking back a sheep, only for the sheep to be Sam in disguise, despite how Sam was standing right in the background as Ralph was taking the sheep. It makes no sense, but it's still pretty funny. Another funny gag has Ralph putting hair growth on Sam to try to block his eyesight. Why he thought that would work, I have no idea, since Sam already can't see through the fur he already has on his head. So Ralph taunts him because he thinks he can't see him, and then he slowly sneaks off to steal a sheep, and then Sam rockets over and starts punching him. It may be familiar to the Roadrunner shorts with no story or unique gimmick, just random backfires after another, but they're still very silly and fun to watch. There's something so funny about seeing these two animals trying to kill each other throughout the cartoon, just to clock out like best friends and say see you tomorrow. Dumb Patrol is a World War I parody, which starts off with Porky as a pilot being tasked to take down an enemy German pilot, being Yosemite Sam, as a Baron. But Bugs Bunny hijacks the cartoon and knocks out Porky with a brick, claiming he can't let Porky go through with it since he has a wife and 6 piglets. I've heard some people call this the worst Bugs Bunny cartoon, and I don't know, I thought it had some funny moments, like Bugs' letter to Sam got a pretty good laugh out of me.
Roses are red, violets are blue, a leghorn's a chicken, and so are you. He even spelt Baron with a small b. P.S. I enclosed a big B in the flowers. Yow!
It's mostly just a comical dogfight cartoon. Not the best, unfortunately. It feels very similar to other aviation cartoons from the Golden Age, but it's not infuriating or annoying per se. It's not too boring, at least, but the short ends with Sam's plane collapsing and comically killing him.
I've heard of Hell's Angels, but I never thought I'd see one.
Again, it's not great, but I wouldn't call it Bugs' worst cartoon. Egghead Rides Again is a pretty pointless cartoon, not one of Tex Avery's best. This was the first cartoon to star the short-lived Egghead character, basically a short man-child who sounds like Daffy Duck. He wants to be a cowboy, but gets kicked out by his annoyed landlord. The landlord's kid-friendly swearing kinda got a laugh out of me.
Dad burn it, a dad burn boarding house ain't no dad burn place to play dad burn cowboy. Now get out and stay out, dad burn it.
Most of the short has Egghead trying to get a job as a cowboy, but constantly failing. He somehow ends up getting the job anyways, but it turns out the job he was applying for wasn't to be a cowboy, but to be the one who sweeps up after cow droppings. It was overall pretty boring and pretty unfunny. Elmer's Rabbit wasn't Bugs Bunny's first appearance, but it was the first cartoon to officially give him his name. This isn't a bad cartoon, but it's so distracting. Coming 1 year after Tex Avery gave Bugs his defining character, only for Chuck Jones to come in and try changing what clearly worked for the character, making Bugs sound deeper and act more grouchy and aggressive, despite still being voiced by Mel Blanc.
This is your new home. Isn't it lovely?
Frankly, old man, I don't like it.
Thank goodness they went back to treating Bugs like its Tex Avery carnation immediately after. The short has Elmer adopting Bugs Bunny as a pet rabbit, but Bugs asserts himself to take over Elmer's house. Bugs' earlier designs were so strange to look at. He looked a little bit bigger. It's weird how his head looked more oval-shaped and how non-defined his nose looked, but Elmer looks pretty impressive in this short with some really fluid animation. It's insane how detailed Chuck Jones' earlier cartoons looked, where he really dumbed down and simplified his art in his later works, but to be fair, every animation studio went through these strict budget cuts and restrictions around the 1950s through 80s. It's kind of strange to see a short where Elmer starts off friendly to Bugs, but Bugs is such an ungrateful pet. He ends up making Elmer into his enemy in the process. It almost makes you not blame Elmer for trying to hunt him down in later cartoons. So there's a few chuckle-worthy moments, like when Elmer and Bugs randomly start dancing after Bugs turns on Elmer's radio, and people probably mostly remember this short for the part where Bugs is in Elmer's bed and he shouts this.
Turn off that light!
The short awkwardly and abruptly ends with the same gag. It feels like we're missing the ending or something with the way it's edited together. It's just so abrupt and, I don't know, it feels off. It's not an awful cartoon. It has some very good animation and facial expressions, and some decent voice work from Bugs and Elmer's voice actors, but it's not a very standout Bugs Bunny cartoon in my opinion.
Turn off that light!
Fair and Warmer from 1946 felt like Chuck Jones's attempt at trying to refresh the tiring chase cartoon formula. The Golden Age was flooded with tiring cat and mouse or cat and bird cartoons. They got very tiring, so Chuck Jones tried making a bigger and crazier chase, where near every character has someone chasing them. We got a crow chasing a worm, the cat chasing the crow, a dog chasing the cat, a dog catcher chasing the dog, and the dog catcher being chased by his angry wife, who was also chased by a mouse she's terrified of. We got some pretty silly gags throughout, like the crow painting his hand to look like an apple for the worm, but the worm tries smashing the apple open, which hurts the crow. The crow begins to realize that he needs to help the dog in order to get rid of the cat who's trying to get rid of him, in order for him to get to the worm. So, Pepe Le Pew even makes a cameo in the short as he gets added to the chase and scares off everyone from his stench, so I wouldn't say this short ended up breathing new life into the tiring chase formula, but it was still very amusing for a one-time experiment. It wouldn't be until Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner would release a few years later, where the chase formula was breathed new life. Greedy for Tweety from 1957 is an odd take on the Tweety and Sylvester formula. After Hector, Sylvester, and Tweety chase each other through traffic, they get injured by a truck and are sent to the hospital. They end up trying to continue the chase while recovering from painful injuries. Funny enough, Granny is the nurse. Sylvester ends up eating Tweety, as Granny sends him to the emergency room to have Tweety surgically removed. Suddenly, Granny says there was nothing wrong with them to begin with and they're free to go. Are you sure about that? They were aching in pain across the cartoon. We get a comical ending where Granny is moving the animal's files from the incoming to outgoing patients category. But as she looks out the window and sees the animals are running through traffic again, she braces for impact and moves their files back into the incoming patients category. It may feel similar to other Tweety shorts, but it's still pretty funny. Amateur Night from 1939 is a Tex Avery short where a group of amateur performers start performing at a theater for amateur night. By the way, Elmer dies from a magic act in this short. They could have easily ended the gag with the Swami shaking his head in disappointment, but they added to it by having him hand the basket with Elmer in it to the usher, telling the usher to give the volunteer his money back. That's kind of funny. So, there's a real funny payoff where there's a loud hippo who constantly gives off huge belly laughs across the performances.
It's a killer! It's a killer!
During a reenactment of the balcony scene from Romeo and Juliet, starring a rooster and a hen, the hippo can be heard laughing in the background as Romeo marches over off-screen and punches the hippo. After they finish their performance, Juliet unexpectedly breaks out into the same laughter as the hippo. We end on a weird gag where the host lets the audience decide who won the show. All the performers get booed except for Elmer, who gets a bunch of applause. Wait a minute, I thought Elmer died. Suddenly, the whole audience is full of Elmers, despite how they were not there from the beginning of the short. I have no idea what happens at the end. It's not Tex Avery's funniest or most entertaining, but it's definitely silly. Hairbreadth Hurry from 1963 is an experimental short where it's just a Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner short, but Bugs trades places with the Roadrunner, after Roadrunner is recovering from an injury. Honestly, it doesn't work as well. It's kind of annoying with Bugs constantly looking at the audience and slowly pointing out the obvious. He just never shuts up in this short, so this isn't even the first time that Bugs was pitted against Wile E. Coyote. There were two previous shorts where Wile E. tries catching Bugs. They were very rare instances where Wile E. was allowed to speak. They weren't necessarily chase cartoons, just Wile E. constantly trying to lure Bugs out of his hole while constantly failing. So for the last Bugs and Wile E. cartoon, they decided to make a full Roadrunner parody without the Roadrunner. In the end, Roadrunner shorts just worked better as silent cartoons in my opinion, but there are still some funny gags here, where Wile E. tries shooting Bugs but nothing happens. He notices that Bugs connected a bunch of pipes to the gun, so Wile E. follows the pipes, and right when he reaches the other end, the bullet comes out and blasts him right in the face. It's a punchline I saw coming, but it was still pretty funny. Another has him holding out an umbrella to try protecting himself from a falling boulder, like in previous cartoons, but it misses him for once. He gets up feeling proud for avoiding that for once, only to get hit by a truck shortly after. The ending joke with the telephone line was also pretty funny.
This is the telephone company. You haven't paid your telephone bill lately, so we're gonna have to cut you off.
It's not the best Wile E. Coyote or Bugs Bunny cartoon, but it still has some funny moments. Henhouse Henry from 1946 is one of the few Henry Chicken Hawk vs. Foghorn cartoons. They usually have the same shtick of a little chicken hawk named Henry trying to hunt down his first chicken as he targets Foghorn, only for Foghorn to lie that he's not a chicken as he tries pointing to other animals, or his rival, the barnyard dog, into trying to lie to him that he's a chicken or something, stuff like that. So, some of these cartoons can have very funny moments, but I honestly never liked Henry Chicken Hawk as a character. I just never found him very funny or entertaining, but his cartoons are worth watching, though, because of the funny interactions we get from Foghorn and sometimes Barnyard Dog. We get some very funny quotes from Foghorn. So yeah, as long as Foghorn's in it, I guess these cartoons are fine. But usually the shorts end with Henry winning, being a rare case since most hunting antagonists lose in Looney Tunes cartoons. This does mark the first time that Foghorn sings Camp Down Races, which is a reoccurring trait in most of his cartoons. It plays out like most Foghorn shorts. He messes with the dog while Henry tries catching Foghorn. We do get some funny bits with Foghorn messing with the dog, like when he paints the fence to look like it's open, only for the dog to crash into it. McKimson shorts admittedly have some of the funniest side-eyed faces, making the characters look so ticked off or smug. I can't say I'm the biggest fan of, like, the McKimson art style, though. Like, there's some shorts where you see, like, Porky, Daffy, or Bugs in them, and they just look kind of off in McKimson shorts, but they work really well for the Foghorn characters. I mean, he made them, after all, so it works in his own style. Meanwhile, Foggy misleads Henry into thinking that other animals are chickens, like ducklings and a turtle. The bit with Henry inside the turtle shell was kind of funny. So in the end, the dog gets fed up with Foghorn abusing him, so he helps Henry in catching Foghorn, and the way they fool him is kind of funny.
A smart chicken would jump over it, like this. Now look at now look at here, son.
It's not the best Foghorn short, but it's still pretty amusing. Hip Hip Hurry from 1958 is the first proper Roadrunner short I get to talk about here. Kinda strange how many of these shorts open up with freeze frames where we get those parody scientific names for the Roadrunner or Coyote, but here the names are given without freezing the characters. We get various backfiring gags like usual, including a trapeze act, a slingshot with dynamite, the usual collapsing cliff and giant boulder being used as a seesaw. The gags in this one mostly feel kind of stale, to be honest. They feel like ones we've already seen before, or they're just too similar to ones we've already seen before. In the end, Wile E. tests a speed tonic on a mouse, and it works. Is this secretly a Speedy Gonzales origin story? So, if Wile E. was so hungry, why didn't he just eat the mouse after he caught it? Anyways, Wile E. tries it on himself so he can run as fast as the Roadrunner. It almost seems like a cool idea, except for the fact that Wile E.'s running speed doesn't seem to be that much faster than before. Either way, the speed tonic was pointless, since the Roadrunner ends up tripping Wile E. into a shed full of fireworks, and he gets blasted away. This was overall a pretty generic Roadrunner short, with nothing much different to offer compared to other shorts. His Bitter Half from 1950 has Daffy reading an ad about a rich female duck looking for a male duck to be her husband. Daffy offers himself to be her bachelor, as we cut to him instantly getting married. Daffy's expecting to live a lazy life of luxury, but of course his wife ends up being threatening and demanding and abusive, and she orders him to do chores. I'm honestly not a fan of these types of shorts where someone ends up getting married thinking it'll be a dream come true and then it's a nightmare. It's just an old and very unpleasant kind of story to watch. So the only cartoon like this I ever recall actually loving is the loose remake of this short called Honey Money, where Yosemite Sam ends up marrying a woman for her money, and he thinks that he'll be the one who can take advantage of her, but she ends up being the one wearing the pants. And both shorts have Daffy and Sam having to put up with their stepson, both named Wentworth, oddly enough. So in the Sam short, Wentworth was an oversized kid who wants to play with his dad, but in the Daffy short, Wentworth is a troublemaking, sadistic kid constantly wanting to hurt his dad. So it was much more fun to see Sam getting all this abuse and punishment because he absolutely deserved it. For Daffy, he really didn't deserve it. It's just not as funny to see Daffy getting abused in this short. It also helps that June Foray was so much funnier as Sam's wife, with both her design and her screams. They were just more hilarious to witness. Sadly, that Sam short was not included on either the Collector's Choice Blu Rays or the Gold Collection DVDs. The Sam short also had a much funnier ending. So in the Daffy short, Daffy refuses to put up with Wentworth or his wife's abuse anymore, and Daffy is shown leaving the family with his feathers torn off of his back. So in the Sam short, Sam claims that he's through with putting up with his wife and son as he marches off, and he starts asking himself if all that money's worth it. And then he says, "What am I kidding?" And he rushes back saying like, "Honey, I'm home!" You know, it's like, that's pretty funny. So overall, this cartoon is a bitter half indeed. If you want a better half, watch Money, Honey instead. Holiday for Drumsticks from 1949 has a live Thanksgiving turkey being brought home by a hillbilly. Daffy is a barn duck getting jealous of the idea of the turkey getting all the good food. He tries scaring the turkey off by telling him how the farmer's just fattening him up so they can eat him. The turkey ends up working out like crazy and loses a bunch of weight, while Daffy ends up eating all the food, getting really fat. This backfires when the farmer decides he doesn't want to eat a scrawny turkey, he wants to eat the fat duck instead. Daffy keeps running away while trying to find a way to lose all of his fat. Daffy ends up getting tricked into taking a cruise to Rio, but ends up being led right into the stove. The short ends revealing the farmer's wife wasted a bunch of matches trying to light the stove, but Daffy keeps blowing them out. It's not a very unique or original plot, but it's still pretty silly. Hot Rod and Reel from 1959 is another Roadrunner short. There is one funny gag where he disguises a gun as a camera and tries tricking the Roadrunner into getting its picture taken, but as Wile E pulls the trigger, he somehow gets shot instead, despite how the gun was facing towards Roadrunner. Now, they could have ended the gag here, but it continues as Wile E realized he forgot to take the lens cap off. Another one involves him setting up a fake railroad and railroad crossing sign in order to try halting the Roadrunner. But right as Wile E jumps out to attack the Roadrunner, a train comes out of nowhere and hits him. Very predictable, but still funny. It's not the best Roadrunner short, but there's still a few decent gags here. Hide and Go Tweet from 1960 is a funny one where Tweety ends up drinking Dr. Jekyll's Mr. Hyde tonic and keeps going back and forth between transforming into a monster and reverting back to his normal self at random. Sylvester wants to eat Tweety but keeps getting attacked by Monster Tweety, being completely unaware that Tweety is the monster. We got some funny moments, like when Monster Tweety grabs Sylvester and flies off of him, only to revert to normal as Sylvester begs Tweety to fly, despite how small and weak Tweety is to try saving him. Sylvester ends up landing safely on the ground thanks to two of Tweety's feathers. He opens his mouth ready to eat Tweety as he falls from above, leading to this. Sylvester ends up locking himself inside of a room with Tweety, and to make sure that Tweety stays and the monster stays out, he tosses the key out of the window. Oh no. In an anticlimactic twist, the whole thing was just a nightmare. Sylvester wakes up, yet is still terrified of Tweety. The plot has been done to death in many other cartoons, but it's still very amusing to see this trope with Sylvester and Tweety. Foghorn Swaggled from 1951 is another Henry Chickenhawk short. Henry is playing a cowboy while trying to catch a chicken. Barn Dog offers to help Henry catch Foghorn if he fetches him a bone. Henry asks Superior Cat if he can help him find a bone, but the cat offers to help him in exchange for a fish. Then a mouse offers advice on getting a fish in exchange for a piece of cheese. Oh boy, this whole short is nothing but a never-ending video game fetch quest. As Henry tries fetching the many items, Foghorn cluelessly tries helping Henry show him the right way to fetch these items, while constantly slipping up, still being clueless that he's helping his enemy.
Kid don't stop talking so much, you'll get his tongue sunburned.
In a comical payoff, the dog finally gets his bone, and he uses it as a club to knock out Foghorn unconscious. It's overall pretty silly. Lickety Splat from 1961 has Wile E skiing across the canyons and highway to try catching Roadrunner. His skis get lodged into a cliff and he tries using the skis as a springboard until they snap and he falls. The dynamite darts he used were pretty cool. He sends them all flying to chase the Roadrunner, but a dud bomb ends up blowing up his hot air balloon, followed by his parachute. Throughout the short, other loose bomb darts make surprise returns for more comical payoffs. I think that's very unique for a Wile E short. Usually the failed gizmos don't make a comeback. But to have a failed gimmick turn into a running gag throughout the short, that was pretty funny. Wile E gets spared at the end as he's about to get bombed by two darts at once, but they're just novelty bombs that pop out a "the end" message. So far, this was the funniest Roadrunner short in the Collector's Choice Blu Rays. It had some of the funniest gags and twists. I think this is where I'm going to end the video for now. I was hoping to get through most of these shorts within an hour, but I'm not even halfway through yet. I'm going through the list in alphabetical order, and I spent roughly over 20 hours for the past 2 days watching these shorts, typing up a script, recording voice lines, and editing the footage. It's a very long and tiring process. And I haven't even gotten to the gold collection yet. But so far, most of these cartoons have been very fun to watch, so see you in part 2, where I should be able to cover the rest of these shorts included in volumes 1 through 4 of the Collector's Choice Blu-rays. Thank you for watching, see you next time, and have a great day.